It would have been satisfying enough to leave it at that, to watch Karen resign in disgrace, slink off into obscurity, and vanish into her garden of expired grievances and defeated dreams. But that's the thing about people like her. They don't vanish, they plot, they reorganize. They sit on the patio with a glass of boxed Chardonnay and stew until their wounded ego bubbles into a boil. You'd think that $18,000 in civil penalties and a formal slap from multiple agencies would have scared her off for good. But Karen, real name Deborah Lorraine Kensington, as it turns out, wasn't one to fade quietly into the HOA scrapbook. No, she was wounded, embarrassed, and worse, publicly exposed. Her empire of vinyl fences, recycling bin citations, and carefully color-coded flower beds had crumbled beneath her, and it was my Jeep, my locked, parked, federally outfitted, legally assigned Jeep that lit the match. At first, the retaliation was subtle. The new HOA president, a mild-mannered accountant named Miles, with the spine of a linguine noodle, forwarded me a series of community concerns that had all been submitted anonymously. Stuff like resident operating unlicensed radio equipment or suspected nighttime surveillance of neighbors, and my personal favorite, possible conversion of residential garage into tactical storage facility. I laughed when I read them, until I realized she was filing these complaints under fake names using a VPN. I traced the timestamps and compared them with security footage. Her backyard lights flicked on nearly every time one of those reports hit Miles's inbox. But of course none of them stuck. The Jeep was assigned to me under a contract protected by the city's law enforcement cooperation agreement. I even got it recertified with an updated badge sticker and placard just to keep things airtight. Still, she persisted. 3 weeks. After her resignation, I got a knock on my door, not police. Worse code enforcement. 2 officers, both apologetic, stood on my porch with clipboards and tired expressions. We received a report about unauthorized structural modifications in your garage and suspicious electromagnetic equipment causing interference with local Wi-Fi signals. I let them in. Showed them the Jeep, the legal permits, the task force, documentation, even let them scan the CUMS equipment with their detectors. Nothing was outside the legal limit. Still, the process took hours. They poked through my workshop, photographed my utility box, and left behind a notice of review that had to be closed out with a follow-up. I knew exactly where it had come from. And more importantly, I knew it wouldn't be the last time. So I upgraded. Not out of fear, but out of principle. I added perimeter motion sensors linked to an encrypted local server. I switched my camera system to a tri-band node mesh with overlapping fields. I installed a second garage door inside the workshop one with no exterior handle and a biometric lock. I even put in a dummy breaker box with fake wires just to confuse anyone nosy enough to peek. I wasn't just going to be prepared. I was going to make her paranoia feel justified, and it worked. The more locked down I made my place, the more she spiraled. Her cameras, which I noticed she had doubled in number, were now angled aggressively toward my house. One even caught a reflection of her whiteboard, filled with scrawled diagrams and arrows, like she was tracking my every move. I couldn't prove it, but I swear she was listening in on my Amazon Echo, because suddenly she started quoting phrases I'd said out loud in my living room, phrases I'd never repeated to anyone. Stuff like, some people treat neighborhood rules like they're commandments, which she later echoed in a Facebook comment calling me a false prophet of local compliance. That was when I realized she hadn't quit the HOA at all. She was just operating from the shadows, pulling the strings through email aliases and burner accounts, her resignation. A tactical retreat. So I laid a trap. One weekend I left town for a fake trip, posted some vacation photos I'd taken years ago, re-edited to look current. Meanwhile, the Jeep stayed parked, front tires turned slightly, one headlight covered to make it look like it was down for maintenance. I even left the garage slightly cracked and turned off the cameras facing the driveway, making it look like I'd temporarily powered things down. In truth, I'd activated the deep surveillance mode, invisible, ear cams with thermal triggers and silent capture audio. It took less than 48 hours. Sunday night, 2:41 a.m., Karen crept out of her backyard, Gate wearing all black, with a flashlight, gloves, and something bundled under her arm. She scanned the area, walked up my driveway, and crouched beside the Jeep. My heart pounded as I watched her unwrap a long, flat device, some kind of signal scanner or RFID reader. She passed it along the door, the windshield, the antenna. Then she reached underneath with a telescoping mirror. Looking for trackers? Tapping into sensors? I don't know what she thought she was doing, but she was tampering with federal equipment. Again, this time I didn't call it in. I let the recording stack. When she finished, she crept toward the garage, tried to lift it with one hand. It didn't budge. Then she looked toward the side fence, where a locked gate marked "Utility Access Only" sat half buried in shadows. She went for it, pulled a small lockpick set out of her coat, and knelt beside the latch. She was 3 clicks in when the floodlights exploded to life. I activated them manually from my phone. Karen froze, mid-crouch, eyes wide. Then she bolted full-speed sprint, flapping robe and all back through her gate like she'd just summoned demons. Which, in a way, she had. I packaged the footage, time-stamped it, printed copies, and sent them to the HOA local code enforcement, and the very same officer who'd handled her last infraction. No warning this time, just cold evidence. When they brought her in for questioning, she spun a story about concerns of illegal surveillance, military-grade eavesdropping, and possible hacker activity. The detective handling the file, who I later shared drinks with, told me she ranted for nearly 40 minutes before requesting a lawyer. They didn't arrest her, but they didn't let it slide either. They placed her under municipal injunction, barring her from coming within 100 feet of my property without permission or a court order. But it wasn't over. A week later, I was summoned, not by the city, by internal affairs from the task force. Karen had submitted a formal complaint to the Department of Justice claiming I was abusing federal property for personal spying operations. She dug through court filings, tracked old vehicle registration loopholes, even tried to subpoena neighborhood footage from 3 years ago to prove I was covertly monitoring residents under the guise of law enforcement support. My supervisor and I had to sit through 3 meetings with federal oversight officers, not because they believed her, but because every complaint, no matter how unhinged, has to be vetted. It wasted weeks, nearly derailed our next op, but it also gave me something I hadn't had before: clearance to go public.c. Up until then, I'd been quiet about what I did. Kept it low-key for the sake of operational integrity. But after the review, the agency authorized me to give a statement to the HOA clarifying my position, duties, and the legal basis for vehicle deployment. I wrote a letter, clear, factual, impossible to misconstrue. I attached the agency seal, cited the cooperation agreement, included the serial number for the Jeep's task asset tag, and finished it with a 1-line warning: further interference with assigned federal equipment will be treated as obstruction of active operations under Penal Code 148.5. Karen didn't take it well. She spiraled on every channel she still had next door. Facebook, even local Yelp reviews where she accused me of harboring a surveillance nest. But the neighborhood? They'd had enough. Even the quiet families, who kept their heads down, started murmuring. She was a liability. A woman so obsessed with imagined power that she brought federal scrutiny down on her own street. One neighbor told me in hushed tones that Karen had tried to reignite the HOA by staging secret meetings at her house. Only 2 people showed up. One left before coffee. The other was her cousin. Eventually, her husband cracked out. It started with the for sale sign. Small, subtle, propped up by the mailbox. Then the blinds stayed shut for days. Her dog normally walked every 4 hours, like clockwork stopped appearing. Finally, on a sunny Thursday morning, a moving truck pulled into her driveway. No fanfare, no farewell brunch, just a quiet, discreet evacuation. I watched from the porch, sipping coffee, as a man who looked about 10 years older than the last time I'd seen him hauled out boxes and avoided eye contact. Karen never emerged. By sunset, they were gone. I never saw her again, but the Jeep stayed. New tires, upgraded scanner, polished like a mirror. and I parked it right where she used to glare at it every morning, just far enough back on the driveway to be within my property line, but forward enough to remind anyone watching that it was still there, still official, still untouchable. And in the spot where she once stood, bolt cutters in hand, I placed a small lawn sign. Plain white. No fancy font, private property, federally assigned vehicle under protection. Below it, in smaller letters, a final message for anyone watching through binoculars. Cut the lock again, and we cut the nonsense. Tea started innocently enough, or so I told myself the first few times. We live in a modest but quiet neighborhood in the California suburbs, tucked between rolling hills and winding streets that all look eerily similar at night. It's the kind of place where people pretend to wave as they pass by, but secretly judge the height of your grass or how many Amazon packages sit on your porch. Our homeowners association, HOA, might as well be a secret police force. Rules are gospel, and any deviation is met with a pink notice paper that flutters passive-aggressively on your door until you beg forgiveness. I'd been here for 7 years, content in my little bubble of normalcy, until the Karen moved in next door. Now, when I say Karen, I don't mean just any rude neighbor. I mean the Karen. Her real name is Lorraine, but everyone calls her Karen. Behind her back, probably even her own family. She fits every stereotype like a glove. The platinum blonde bob that never frizzes, the oversized sunglasses worn rain or shine, and the permanently puckered lips that look like they've been caught in a wind tunnel. And of course the signature weapon complaints. Complaints about noise, complaints about leaves blowing into her yard, complaints about the smell of my barbecue. But her worst offense by far wasn't a matter of etiquette, it was theft. Plain and simple. Power theft. It started about a year after she moved in. I'd noticed a slight uptick in my electric bill. Not a big one at first, but I'm the kind of guy who notices when things don't line up. I work in IT systems engineer, so numbers are my thing. Spikes like that mean something. At first, I chalked it up to my wife's new espresso machine or the extra hours I'd been putting into my workshop out back. But by the third month, something didn't add up. My garage breaker would trip at odd hours of the night. That's when I started watching. I installed a few hidden cameras. Nothing serious, just those little Wi-Fi-enabled things that you can mount discreetly inside an outdoor vent or fake birdhouse. I wanted to monitor the side of my house where the external outlet was, used mainly for my tools and occasionally when we hosted people in the yard. It was positioned just low enough to be hidden from street view, and that's where the breach was happening. One morning, reviewing the footage, I saw it. 2:13 a.m., a shadow slipped through the gate. I leaned in close. Karen, unmistakable. Pajama pants with flip-flops and that stupid monogrammed hoodie LK in gold cursive. She walked straight to my outlet, coiled up a thick black charging cable, and plugged it into her shiny white Tesla parked along the curb. I was stunned. Not just by the boldness, but by the repetition. As I kept digging through the recordings, I found it had been going on for weeks, possibly months. Always the same pattern. Late-night plug-ins, never less than 2 hours. Sometimes up to 5. She'd coil the cable tightly, almost reverently, like she was folding a flag, and sneak away as if nothing happened. My first instinct wasn't anger, it was disbelief. Who does that? I mean, it's one thing to be annoying. It's another thing to steal power in a neighborhood with 24/7 surveillance and an HOA. That'll fine you for having your trash bins visible past 9 a.m. the next day. So I decided to confront her calmly. I caught her outside trimming her already perfect hydrangeas one Saturday morning. I walked over, coffee mug in hand, tried to keep it civil. "Hey, Lorraine, mind if I ask you something?" She smiled with all the warmth of a DMV clerk and didn't stop snipping. "Sure, what's up?" "I think there's been some kind of mix-up. My outside power outlet, someone's been using it at night." "I've got footage." "It's your charging?" "Cable, I think." She paused, blinked behind her sunglasses. "Oh? That? Yeah, I figured it was okay. I mean, it's just a little electricity. That outlet's rated at 240 volts. The kind of juice that powers table saws and entire VEX systems. Her Tesla wasn't sipping on my grid, it was guzzling it like a frat boy at a kegger. I tried to stay calm. It's not okay, Lorraine. That's theft. My breaker's been tripping. I've had to reset my circuits multiple times. She scoffed, not even pretending to apologize. You tech guys always exaggerate. It's just for a few hours here and there. Besides, the O says, we're supposed to be eco-conscious. I'm driving electric. That's saving the planet. I wanted to scream. With my electricity? She waved me off like I was some pesky telemarketer and returned to her pruning. Relax, it's just temporary. We're getting solar installed next month. You won't even notice by then. But I did notice every night. My power usage kept creeping up. And worst of all, she'd started doing it earlier in the evening, no longer waiting until everyone was asleep. She'd plug in casually while watering her lawn, sometimes chatting on her Bluetooth like it was her God-given right. So I reported her to the HOA, sent them footage. They promised to look into it. But weeks passed and nothing happened. Then I got a notice I was being fined for unauthorized outdoor equipment usage. Karen had flipped the script, claiming my tools were a safety hazard. Of course, took her side. She was friends with Linda, the HOA treasurer, who also drove a Tesla. That's when I snapped. I could have taken her to small claims court. Filed a police report, but no. That's not how this game would be played. If she wanted to mess with power, then I'd give her a taste of it. I spent 2 weekends working on it. Wired a new external box to look exactly like the old outlet, same cover, same placement, but the guts? Oh, that was art. I rereaded it through a dummy circuit one that I custom built to deliver a delayed capacitive overload. Enough to fry a charger's internals if left connected long enough. Not dangerous to life, mind you, I'm not a monster. But to a Tesla's charger? Instant meltdown. I even installed a bypass capacitor with a delayed voltage dump. 30 minutes after plug-in, boom, fizzled adapter. The bait was set. It took 3 days. Monday night, 12:47 a.m. She crept up like usual. Plugged in, walked away. 31 minutes later, the camera caught it. A loud pop, a flash of sparks, and the unmistakable smell of burnt circuitry rising in the air. Karen came running out in her slippers, panic written all over her face. She tugged the cable, yelped when she touched the scorched adapter. I sat in my living room, sipping scotch, watching it all unfold on my monitor. Justice, sweet, electrically conducted justice. She didn't try again after that. The next morning, her Tesla was towed to the service center. I overheard her shouting. On the phone, arguing about warranty coverage. Something about unexpected surge damage and external source fault. Tesla didn't cover it. The charger was toast. Repairs? $2,100. Installation of a new home wall unit. Another $1,000. My outlet still humming along just fine. I even swapped back to the original box the next day like nothing had happened. Of course, she came to confront me. You did this, she hissed, storming over while I was out mowing the lawn. I cut the engine and removed my ear protection. Did what? Don't play dumb. You rigged that outlet. I shrugged. It's on my property. No one's allowed to use it without permission. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no leg to stand on. The next week, I got a letter from the HOA. Her complaint against me was dismissed due to lack of evidence. My fines were revoked. Hers, however, were just beginning. Tampering with a neighbor's utilities without consent? Grounds for expulsion under the updated bylaws. I'd made sure of that by submitting a policy proposal. 6 weeks earlier, anonymously, of course, Loren's solar panels never got installed. The HOA put a freeze on her application pending investigation. She ended up parking her Tesla at a friend's house 2 blocks over for charging. Sometimes she'd walk the distance in the dead heat of summer, cursing the whole way. I watched her from my porch, lemonade in hand, savoring every step. But what Karen didn't know, what no one knew, was that I wasn't done yet. She still owed me, and I had plans.